pretend I'm doing something.
Right. We got to act like we know what we're talking about, right?
That's right.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, John Wells. I'm super excited for this conversation for a few different reasons. One is that you're my wife's boss, so I'm very nervous.
Good.
I feel like
Good.
I have to, act like I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking to my wife's boss. But jokes aside, I'm actually really grateful to have the opportunity to pick your brain because over the last 18 months or so, I've had the opportunity to work with the Wells Group from a marketing perspective. But part of that work has been that I've gotten to have some insight into the business that you've built. So for anybody listening, John is the owner and founder of the Wells Group, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the largest real estate brokerage in La Plata County. I was going to say this side of the Mississippi, but definitely, in our neck of the woods for sure. But it's been cool for me to see a few different things. One is obviously the success of the business that you've built, but it's also been really fun for me to kind of observe the culture and the people within your business. And I've had a chance to, observe you at awards ceremonies or things like that. And anyway, anytime I get a chance to sit and see somebody who builds not only a successful business, but a healthy business and a happy business, and that has family involved and great culture and things like that. Just excited to learn from you and pick your brain. So thank you a ton for taking the time, because I know you have houses to sell and businesses to run and, all of that stuff. But I just really appreciate you taking the time. I'd love it if you didn't mind. Can you tell me the early days story? How did you get into real estate? Did you always want to be in real estate? What did day one look like?
That's a good question, and I'll give you an answer. I'll do a clarification first, though, and that is the Wells Group is not the biggest by number of brokers, real estate brokerage in La Plata County, Southwest Colorado. For 25, 27 years, it's been the market share leader. So our numbers are about 40 brokers right now. There are other companies with 50, 60, maybe close to 70. But just since you said the biggest, we aren't the biggest, but we certainly do the majority of volume year after year after year. So the early days, I will say embarrassingly, no, I didn't graduate from Fort Lewis College in 1978 and say I'm getting into the real estate business. I was committed to try to stay in Durango. Got married right out of college, and my wife and I had decided to trying to stay in Durango, like a lot of people that go to college want to do, in nice communities, Durango being one of those, would want to stay and make our living here. I worked for the Orr House. That's my other graduate degree from the Orr House here in Durango, and had the fortune to bartend and wait and then floor manage there, and thought I was going to build a career in restaurant business because I enjoyed most parts of that and got along well with the ownership there. Yet getting married changed that because my wife worked a real job and I worked a day job. My day job was teaching skiing because I wanted to pay for the house we just bought and working at nights at the Orr House. So really, just to flash forward, buying that first house was a wreck. With all due respect to the broker that assisted me, every answer, because I had a lot of questions. Contracts are complicated, title work's complicated, loan packages are complicated. And I asked a lot of questions, being 23 years old, about all those. And he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. They'll tell you that at closing. And I read through. But when we closed, and knock on wood, nothing bad happened, I said, I'll never do that again. I'm going to learn about the business. So I did take the real estate class that was held on weekends, the old day before technology, for like 2 months on weekends to go through and learn what I was embarrassed to not figure out on my own since I didn't have much help.
With the intention of it becoming a career, or more that you just needed to be more educated?
No, I needed to be more education. More education. The Fort Lewis College did have a class on real estate, not a major or anything, but I could never fit that into my class schedule when I went to Fort Lewis College. So yes, it was for me to learn more, to not be naive about the process. And at that time, then I met people in the industry that said, you should consider this. So that's when I started considering it. A big part because I was newly married and I was working, like you, 16, 18 hours a day, right?
Right.
So that wasn't working well. And to think that I could take on a job that was more of a conventional daytime job was part of it. But quite honestly, I got more and more intrigued with the industry having gone through that classwork. And so I started selling real estate in 1979, 45 years ago.
Wow. So a few things there I'd love to get some more insight from. Two observations from that story that stand out to me. First is that you bought your first house at 23, which I think is remarkable. But second, that you had a desire, you had this yearning for more knowledge and more education, so much so that you started taking the real estate classes with no initial intention of it becoming a career. To me, those speak to probably other character traits or other things about you that have maybe contributed to where we are today, which I'd love to learn more about. In terms of the pursuing the education component of real estate early on, was that a unique thing for you, or were you always a learner and I don't know, like were you always doing things like that, like having the desire to learn more and better yourself? Where did that come from?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It was, I enjoyed my college career. I was a much better student in college than I was pre-college. I was not a 4.0 student. But quite honestly, real estate was interesting to me. Quite honestly, not beyond acquiring our first house, but in the process of taking the classwork after that, I certainly became more interested in the many dynamics that real estate offers. And I'd like to say that, yes, I wanted to be in the real estate business the moment I walked across the stage for graduation, but that was not the case. I would say I wasn't quite that mature maybe at that time.
Still figuring out what you wanted to do, or did
Yes.
you have an idea for where you were headed?
No, I had a few plans. One was to grow the restaurant business with Beadle Absagen at the Orr House, and we looked at different business plans for, Evergreen, Colorado, for example, or the perimeter of Denver, because my wife was from Denver, so we knew the area a little bit. But fortunately, I didn't get in the restaurant business. Certainly people have done well with it, but it's tough hours for a evening dining restaurant.
Yeah, I think you picked an okay industry. So, just to clarify my timeline, you got your license and started selling real estate in 79.
Yes.
You said.
Mm-hmm.
When did the Wells Group come to fruition? When did you start the Wells Group?
1985.
So 6 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. What made you think that you wanted to start a brokerage and do
Sure.
more than just selling?
Sure. Well, I had an interest fairly early on in ownership. I had talked to my first broker that I worked with about the possibility, and we got pretty far down the road, but it just wasn't in his chemistry, and that worked out for the best probably. I opened a real estate company for Purgatory in probably 82 or 83 when they started developing real estate up there, and I was fortunate enough to get hired to run the office. Obviously, it wasn't experienced in managing an office, but in selling. And so I hired a handful of people, and we sold for them for about 3 years. They took a big directional change with the economy, tax law changes. That market dried up really quickly. And they got out of whole ownership sales and said timeshare must be the answer. And I have to thank Purgatory for doing that, because that triggered me to create a business plan to create the Wells Group, because timeshare was not in my wheelhouse. That was not the direction I wanted to go. So we created a business plan and opened the Wells Group with two partners in 1985.
Walk me through that, because it seems like you had, when you mentioned developing the business plan and kind of seeing opportunities, it almost seems like you saw a different way to do things or a better way to do things or a different model. What was kind of I'd be curious to, let's go back in time. I want to, hear what was on John Wells's mind when the Wells Group was becoming real. Like, what opportunities were you seeing? What gave you the courage to start a brokerage? Because I feel like it's a risky endeavor, especially, starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you, first of all, even then we had really good competitors in the Durango real estate market. Quality companies, quality leadership, but truly felt there was a niche for a company that was focused more on the sales team from a standpoint of support, and experienced that probably in my previous occupations with different brokerages and Purgatory. That's one. Two, we felt that there was a niche again to be filled in regards to being independent. At the time, there was quite a few companies that became franchises. Coldwell Banker, Remax, I think had just come on. There was a Century 21. There was a few other now defunct franchises, and we felt that we're a hometown team. We're homegrown, home schooled, and we were going to create a company that was not depending on a franchise, but more based locally.
So one of the things I love that, by the way, and the supporting the sales effort makes so much sense now, obviously, looking back in hindsight. I'm curious, from a entrepreneurial perspective or kind of a business ownership perspective, what are the differences between, because you could have just stayed an independent broker, right? And just been your own boss and done your own thing. Why the desire to start an actual brokerage and, bring people in versus just kind of taking those opportunities that you saw yourself and doing it yourself? What was the driving force behind really formalizing it and starting it all as opposed to just going at it on your own?
You mean instead of just being a independent licensed broker within a brokerage?
An agent, right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and that's a great platform. Brokers are independent contractors, so they have their own business, as you well know, with your wife's business.
Yeah.
And my saying is a real estate broker's unemployed every day. They go to work and they have to create some business. They might have a listing or customers they're working for, but every day they have to go and reinvent that marketing, find the inventory, find the product that matches, etc. So it's an interesting business, and quite honestly, one that has a change every day. Today I had a little interview with a 16-year-old young man from Silverton who wants to get in the real estate business. His teacher had called and said, "This young man would like to talk to you." And really, this kid is an entrepreneur. I asked him what he did in the summers for summer work, because Silverton is pretty isolated. And he goes, "Well, I sold rocks, and then my buddy and I made little bead bracelets. We sold those to people right when they got off the train. And then we made our own T-shirt manufacturing company and made T-shirts." So I said, this young man's an entrepreneur, and real estate is entrepreneurial. There is not a salary involved with the brokers that work for us or other companies. So I'm taking a little sidetrack there, but this made me think about today's meeting with you, because that entrepreneurial spirit is what we look for. That's what Nicole has. She's an entrepreneur, right? And we can't make somebody an entrepreneur.
Right.
So there's back to the formation of the company. We look for that entrepreneurial spirit. And then we said, let's figure out how we can support that, because it's exciting. Our business is exciting. We've got plenty of stresses, believe me, in a transaction or trying to assist people that really have to sell their property or need to sell their property, or buyers that are in a time crunch or an issue with, of course, the prices and interest rates. Plenty of stress every day. But the entrepreneur figures out the path, and what we sell is not real estate. We don't own the real estate. we are selling service. So to me, it was a different look at the business. We're selling service. We're not selling real estate. That's the formation.
How have you had that? Because one of the things I'm interested to pick your brain about is the longevity of success that you've experienced as well. I mean, it's really cool to hear, we're talking early 80s
Mid-80s.
Mid 80s. Thank you. 85 is
85.
85.
First computer in a real estate office in Durango, Colorado.
Yeah. Was it really?
It was.
Interesting. Because that's I'll just segue into that because that was on my list to talk to you about is, you think about the world in general from 1985 to 2024 and how much it has changed. But I think in the real estate world, especially, the way that real estate business has been conducted has evolved so much through technology and things like that. I was commiserating with Nicole about how hard business ownership is and, real estate and all of that stuff. And it dawned on me that it used to be that you had to have a realtor, a real estate agent to get access to MLS listings and,
right.
Things like that. You'd literally have to go to the office, print them out, and they'd show them. And nowadays technology is so much information's available for people. And that's just obviously one tiny example, but I'd be curious your perspective from a just generally speaking, how have you stayed relevant and how has the business continued to be a top producing brokerage with the immense amount of change that has had to have happened in the last, is that 40 years coming in on 40 years?
39, just 39.
But yeah, I mean, that's remarkable to me. And I think it speaks to, probably the leader being able to navigate all of that change. But I'd love to hear how you've approached those significant changes. Knowing that you're the first brokerage to have a computer at the office is really cool. And, from that entrepreneurial kind of mindset, because there's had to have been dozens of very significant changes in the industry. What's your approach been when those changes arise and how do you manage your business with it?
Well, overstated, simply used statement is the only constant is change. That's true in every industry, but certainly in ours. To me, I would like to think I'd be able to tell you that I premeditated a lot of the changes in the industry, but that's not true.
We could lie a little.
Yeah. We'll just be
You had a crystal ball.
Yeah, the crystal ball we try to predict. But really it's a matter of adaptation, but that adaptation comes from commiseration with the team that we've formed in our culture, in our office. I'd be naive to think that I sit up late at night and figure out an answer to a challenge or a change in the industry or the business. So we have great sharing group of brokers and staff, and that's kind of how we approach change. I mean, Abby Munn and I just got back from a conference, real estate conference, great 3-day conference. And there's a lot of talk about all the change, and we did the same thing there. But the one thing that we recognized is we've talked about a lot of these changes within the walls of the Wells Group for months. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? There's an opportunity to create an approach. If every change or reaction to change been proper or ideal or perfect? No. But that's kind of that's how you create those calluses and learn how to adapt and be better with the next change if your adaptation didn't work the first time.
Yeah, I love that the approach of sourcing information from team members and kind of having the collective decision, because it makes so much sense when I think about it. Everybody has perspectives and experiences with different things, or I don't know, kind of the outside the box. But I think that that's unique from a leader to, I don't know, kind of have those collective problem solving initiatives with your team and your brokers. Has that always been the case, or did you learn at some point that, I'm just kind of curious if, as those changes have happened, if you always have been a team, picking everybody's brain to solve the problems, or is that something that you learned along the way?
Fairly early on, I can't put a finger on when, but by experience, and that could go back 30 plus years ago, uh, it is just a lot more value to go over potential change or reactions or modifications with multiple people. Why? Because not all of us are going to agree on the approach. Some ideas are going to be unique. Some are going to be aha moments. And you can't believe that you, as a single human being, can come up with all those on your own all the time. It's just not reality.
Yeah.
So, having people that are comfortable sharing is great. And I would say that I probably get defensive about some of my ideas, but the reality is, if they're not the best, then there's no ownership with having to say we have to do it my way. You might don't ask your wife if that's the way it always works. Some people in the office might not believe that, but listening to people and the industry and in the industry and out. I know you interviewed recently. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't listened to it yet. Al Harper, a good friend, came from the real estate industry. And when we have the opportunities to get together and talk shop, there's always something, even though he hasn't been in the business for a long time, there's something that I gleaned from a conversation with Al Harper, and he's in the train business.
Right.
So, it's the same thing. I can visit with you for 20, 30 minutes, and I'm going to learn something.
That's the whole reason I started a podcast, so I can learn from people.
Yeah.
Are you ever worried that puts you at risk of, because I think that a lot of times, sometimes leaders they feel an obligation to present themselves as if they have all of the answers, or, kind of like portray confidence or that type of thing. Does that ever concern you that, it's okay to say, I don't know right now, and gather more information and learn? Has that ever been a concern for you
Well, I could say I have a lot of more battle scars than a lot of people because I've done this for 45 years. A lot of those are pertinent to when a broker comes and asks a question about a transaction, a deal, a structure, because I've probably experienced it many times. I've experienced something like that, but not always. So, again, I don't purport that I know everything, but a lot of the traditional real estate questions I can answer pretty easily because you've done something for 45 years. You should be able to.
Not your first rodeo.
But again, from a standpoint of business direction, business, the company management, I'm really glad and excited to have, I have 3 people that have joined in with some ownership, Zane, my son Zane Wells, Abby Munn, and Thad Trujillo. And we meet every week. We met this morning, and we put a lot of energy into, what became a 2-hour meeting. They're at a point in their youth, in my opinion, that 2-hour meetings is not a norm. Not for me either, but we hadn't met for a couple of weeks, so it was very pertinent that we address that. So, for example, really a great opportunity for me to have these sounding boards of the youth, because I think it keeps things in reality.
Yeah.
If I got stuck in doing it my way, the path isn't as bright.
Right. What's that been like? Because, I found it and own Ascent, but it's right now it's my baby, and it's in its infancy. We're only a few years in, but your name is literally on the building. What's that been like from a transition perspective of, I don't know, bringing in some new ownership and some fresh perspectives? Has that been hard? Has that only been good? What's it been like from from your perspective, kind of seeing an evolution, or I don't know, a second wave sort of starting to emerge?
Well, again, back to the formation, I had partners at the beginning. I had a partner that retired like three or so years ago, Jim Watkins, retired. But bringing in the youth, I say youth, obviously compared to me, is valuable. I have to say that I have been in a mindset probably of a micromanager for a while, having had the business for so long. So those are things I have to remind myself of to try to not, if you will, overburden my team with that micromanagement. So I'm having some hard times letting go of some things, but the reality is it's all for the betterment for our brokers, for our staff, for our customers. And, times change more rapidly now than they did 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, to have different generations involved is a really valuable part.
Yeah. I saw a thing the other day on Instagram that I think was more of maybe justifying being a micromanager. And basically what it said was that micromanagers are just are people with extremely high expectations or something like that. I forget the exact. And I was like, ooh, yeah, I am. But I struggle with that too, of micromanaging and, kind of letting go and realizing that there are people way smarter than me and way more talented than me. But it's a tough balancing act because you've also gotten to where you are because of your insight and your intuition and sort of your, instincts in terms of where the business should go and the decisions that you're making. So I can't imagine how difficult that must be to balance what do I hold on to? What do I let go of? Do you feel like you're sort of falling into I'll call it a new role now that you've got kind of different responsibilities, or what's that looking like for kind of the evolution of your involvement, or is it not changed? There's just other help.
Well, for better or worse, I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I'm not afraid of putting in the hours. So that probably counterbalances in some regards. But, there's some anxiety. Letting go has anxiety. But I'm managing it. I'll put it that way. I don't have my eye on, okay, I'm going to go sit in a rowboat and catch fish all day. It's not my personality. I like fishing, don't get me wrong. But, there's certainly things I need to spend more time with, family and grandchildren and stuff, friends. That being said, I really still enjoy what I do. So there's a little nugget that everybody can't say they have. I know you enjoy what you do.
Thoroughly.
It's effervescent from you. And I have friends that are retired that I'm sad to say, if I asked them how many years they enjoyed what they did out of, let's say, 30-year career, they might say 3 or 4. And that's sad.
Yeah.
That's really sad. Now, is every day perfect? No. But in context, to enjoy what you do day in and day out is valuable.
Yeah, pretty good gig. What gives you anxiety? What are the things that are, making you nervous from the transition? Is it just because you truly do enjoy what you do and you want to continue that? Or are there things that it's hard to kind of see from the actual brokerage perspective?
Sure. Well, anxiety, I have to catch myself not to impart my overly strong opinion in every case, right? Because I want their input. And yet I've done it my way for a long time.
And it seems like it's worked.
So, I have to go through a little mind game of going, there's a reason that I've chosen to have involvement.
Mm.
And part of it's succession, okay, for long term. But quite honestly, in the past, when I've had partners, the reason for partnership is for collaboration. So even though I'm a bit of a micromanager, I've always had collaboration with people. And so today, I think it's going to be a little easier to keep letting go of it. So I haven't let go of it totally, which you can ask. You can ask them about that.
Yeah. Speaking of that and collaboration, and I'm very guilty of. I'll just say I'm probably not the easiest partner in the world because I care a ton. Like I have a tendency of, I'm a little bit intense. I grab onto things and I care and I need it done perfect yesterday and, rock and roll, and realize that there are benefits with collaboration and that people have strengths that I don't have. So it's something I'm actively working on as we speak. So it's actually a little bit refreshing to hear, a guy from your seat have some similar traits that we both know
Sure.
need to be a little bit reined in from time to time. One of the things I'm curious about, it's been really fun for me to get to know Zane better the last few years, the last 18 months or so. And him and I share a lot of similar personality traits in terms of just productivity and the business mind. I love sitting and, getting feedback from him on what the market's doing. And then I get to think, oh, well, we could target this then if we did it like that. They're just really, really fun conversations.
Yes.
What I have not gotten to see is, what happens at the Wells family Thanksgiving dinner, the realities of the father and son dynamic. What's that been like? And did you always know that Zane would, follow in your footsteps, for lack of a better term, but go into the real estate world and do you feel pride? I mean, I got to imagine it's kind of cool working with your son and seeing him be as successful as he is, and kind of now with the ownership side of it too. But what's that been like? What's your perspective on that?
Sure. Well, it's a good question. I'll go back a little further and tell you that when they were young, like elementary school age, I was divorced from my wife at that time when Zane was probably about 8, and my younger son's probably 3 or so.
Did you just have the 2 sons?
Yep,
cool.
two boys. So what do real estate people do on the weekends? They show property, right? And my schedule with my boys was Thursday night through, drop off Monday kind of thing or something. So as they got into high school, they both said, without trying to hurt my feelings, we'll never get in this business. You spend so many weekends working. And we had to spend those weekends with you. Working.
Yeah.
Back in the
We've done enough
suburban,
of it.
Snacks, games, homework, showed them how to find fence lines, all that fun stuff.
That's how my kids are growing up.
Yeah. So they I understood that, they got immersed in it more than they needed to because they were children. So sorry for that background, but as we flash forward, I don't think Zane had his eye on that when he got out of college. He went and got his master's in Ireland and came back.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and played some soccer over there and did the master's. And soccer in Ireland was more like rugby, I think. So it's a little different gig. And so when he came back, growing up in Durango, he's like, I need to experience a city. I'm born and raised here, went to college here. I need a change. So he moved to Denver. Fast forward, not to take all its time, but he got a job with commercial real estate brokerage of some people we knew in that firm and did well with that. So why is he back here? Because he got away from it, and there he went and got in commercial real estate. Because the city life wasn't for him. And 9 years ago, I think, he kind of was complaining enough about it and feeling the need to make a change. So I said, well, come on down. We're going to interview you. And he goes, interview? I said, yeah, we're going to interview you. Which maybe sounds odd to somebody listening, but I had a partner. And I said, Jim, I'm going to have you sit down and interview Zane.
Yeah.
And why? Well, it should be no different than anybody else wants to go work for the company. We're going to ask similar questions. We're going to want to know what their chemistry, what the reasons are. Just like Nicole, your wife was, right?
Yep.
So a bit odd, maybe some people think, but that was the process. So he got back here and, like you, driven and focused, and has built, I'm very proud of him, building up the business he's built. To answer the question you first asked, for a long answer, but to get to the point, I've always hoped and dreamt that my boys would want to get involved in the business. but I didn't create overly strong, basically expectations for that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to disappoint myself, and I didn't want to put pressure on them. I had some pressure to get into the family business when I was young and going to college, and it wasn't what I wanted to do. But that there's some guilt placed on a younger son or daughter if their expectations are to get in the business. So I didn't put on it. I'd hope you'd agree with that. So flash forward, he's doing well. I'm glad that he's getting involved in the ownership. My younger son's in real estate, but in the development side, building. And interesting, they both got in the industry in a sense after all those years in the suburban backseat with customers.
How insightful, though, to hear you say, you had this very strong desire for, your boys to be involved in the family business, but you knew that if you set expectations, you're at risk of disappointing yourself, but I think also probably at risk of, preventing that and pushing them away.
Right.
And, now that Zane's in the business and he's here because he wants to be, I think that's, the ideal situation rather than here because of pressure or guilt or things like that. I feel like that's insightful for how you handled it. And it seems like that was intentional on your part. Like you knew that if this was ever going to be successful, if they were going to be part of the business, that it had to be by choice. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I've seen family businesses where there's family members, younger family members involved that feel that they're there because they had to be. And if it really isn't their passion, then that's sad for both the family and for the individual. So, certainly it's not a perfect world, but we certainly would hope that our children, you've got a ways to go till yours are in working, although I see them doing chores.
I put them to work, yeah.
Are involved in something they enjoy doing and contribute. That's the other kind of pillar of the Wells Group. We have an expectation of contribution.
Yeah.
To the community, involvement in the community. It's not just about writing a check for a donation. It's about getting involved with organizations and giving back.
Yeah, in fact, and that's one of the things I was interested to pick your brain about. There's a page on your website with all of these I forget what it's titled, but it's basically lists the organizations that I think it's charitable contributions and involvement. Yeah. And I've seen little things like you guys giving away pumpkins to the community at Halloween, and just these like really neat things that the Wells Group does. I'm curious about it for a few different reasons. One is why, the very intentional and active involvement in these nonprofits and, kind of community organizations and things like that. But secondly, would love to just kind of hear from you what it's like to know that you've built a business that can make an impact like that. Cause that's candidly something that I envy. Mm-hmm. I think that it's neat to see, because I'm coming from a position right now where I'm working my tail off for myself at the moment, but I do have I love serving. I love, we've got a philosophy here that givers gain. Mm-hmm. We believe that, the best way for us to grow our business is to grow other businesses. And, my point is someday I want to have a page on my website that shows, the community involvement with the list like that. Why do you think that's important, and what does it feel like to know that you continue to make such a big impact on all of these great organizations?
Sure. Well, one, let me say, when we say we certainly want and encourage everybody to participate in the community, the demands on many younger families, looking at you all, for example, with 3 young children, and watching Zane and Vicky and their 2 children, I'm like, how did I even get close to putting that much energy into it? Quite honestly, you all have a lot of energy going into these wonderful, beautiful young children on top of the hours and hours you put into work. So where do you find the time? But it's not all about time. It's about lending your expertise and commitment, which sometimes can be on a time frame that you are comfortable with because of the knowledge you have. So back to our philosophy is we want our brokers to be involved with the community. And we don't dictate what that is. It's whatever their interest and passions are. Because everybody has a passion that has some connection to some opportunity in the community. That's one. Yes, we do a substantial amount of financial giving and support. But our philosophy is the community's been very good to us. The community, when we say that, that's Southwest Colorado, La Plata County, beyond. And we want to give back, not just monetarily, but in regards to volunteerism and support. And it is a giving. Givers get, or your philosophy, it's actually factual and true. So by us contributing and giving and being involved, we get more from it. I mean, boards that I'm on, I learn from them. Two, you get knowledge and relationships from that board. And Al Harper, for example, I got him involved with Fort Lewis College Foundation, and he can tell you, I didn't know it was going to be a 20-year commitment, but, he is super creative, and you learn something from him every time you're at a meeting with him, as an example, and he's just one board member. So it's not selfish, but in a sense you do get back from it. But at the same time, everyone has something that they can give and contribute, whatever that is. So that's a big part of our foundation of our footing of the company.
Do you think, because one of the things I'm most fascinated about is that I've gotten to, sometimes it's because my wife works there, sometimes it's because I've got a camera in hand, whatever it might be, but I've had the opportunity to tag along on, some Wells Group, company things, whether it was the ski day at Purgatory or the summer picnic or the pink day at Fort Lewis College Athletics or whatever it might be. But anyway, through all that, I've gotten to kind of observe the culture of your company and the culture of your brokerage. And one of the things that has been really interesting to me is that it's hyper competitive, as it should be. It's a lot of people, like you had talked about earlier, that they're their own businesses, and everybody, there's no guaranteed income. I mean, by nature, you've got personalities that have to be entrepreneurial and competitive, but it's also collaborative and inclusive. And I'm sure there are things, I'm sure there are struggles, I'm sure that there are issues, but generally speaking, it seems like a place with an incredibly healthy culture, a place that has, really good pillars and foundations and things like that. I have to think that that's been intentional and that's required work. When you've, been building the business and deciding who can join and who can't and things like that, as it relates to culture, what are the things that you look for, and what are the things that you have found to be very valuable that have influenced the culture? Because I think that, even like Nicole will share with me, little funny emails that you'll send, or just kind of like the little ways that I think, you contribute to comfortability around your office and things like that. But simultaneously, we talked about it earlier, number one, brokerage in terms of performance and sales and listings. And don't let me misspeak if anybody's listening, but
No, that's true.
So I just think that's interesting that we have this very high level of performance, competitive nature amongst the brokers, but then these like overlying themes of collaboration and help and community involvement and things like that. I just would love to hear how you did that and the things that you felt like have helped contribute to such a healthy company culture.
Sure. Well, there's some organic growth there that just happens, so we're not going to take credit for everything. But there is no doubt, no matter who we hire, staff or brokers, a goal to, if we do make a selection of let's say a new broker that's considering coming to work at the Wells Group, that we feel that they will fill and fit the culture. So what is the culture? It morphs and changes from time to time, but quite honestly, the culture at the Wells Group, in my opinion, is one that is trusting of everyone, even though you're competitors, understanding that you have people that have your back and would help out if need be. We see this happen every day. We've just had today, some people had to take care of their senior parents, and all of a sudden, yikes, I can't be in town for a week, and I have all this business I have to take care of. There's people jumping in to help out. Not going, oh gosh, I got to chip in. It's like they want to help that broker, which is helping who? The consumer and our customers.
Right.
So to us, the other value of culture is you can be a bad culture, a good culture, right? But hopefully we have a healthy culture. It's a better environment to work in. The unique part of the Wells Group is we have competitive people that may, it's a small town. They may know multiple people that could be considered similar or the same customer. But with the culture and kind of our mantra and mission of the company is our wall. If you've seen it in our room with our statements, we'll probably make a reference to a couple of those tomorrow, just because we want to remind people. Don't forget, you don't have to memorize it, but certainly what we stand for. And as a core of the direction of the company, that's a big part of it. But quite honestly, it's a matter of getting lucky, but also purposeful with who we've hired in the past. Our longevity is substantial. I think it's 12, 15 years average employment. We just had 2 retirees in the last 12 months. Both started with me the day we opened the office.
Wow.
So they were with us for 37 years. Probably unusual, but we have plenty of 20-plus year employees and brokers, 10, 15, 20-year employees. Zane's been back 9 years already, for example. Abby Munn started at 22. I shouldn't say that, but I'll just say she's been with us over 20 years.
There you go.
Okay. So when I look back at that, it's unusual to see a business that has 20, 30-year employees.
Yeah.
Really is. Especially when they're independent contractors. They can work anywhere.
Right.
So it is the brokers and staff create the culture. Can there be somebody that disrupts the culture? Always. It will happen from time to time. But quite honestly, it's in check and balance because the culture is so strong that if somebody really, really isn't fitting in the culture, it's going to solve itself.
They'll weed themselves out.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you feel like that strength of culture has happened because of longevity? That it's been that way for long enough, or that there's a few real core players that have contributed? I'm just kind of curious because I know, how important that side of it is. And, looking at the longevity of employees and things like that, I'm just kind of curious if you have an opinion or a hypothesis on,
Sure.
How it got to the point where it can be sort of this that it's its own thing, like that the culture now it'll weed people out even if needed. That's remarkable.
Well, when we started the Wells Group, we had 6 people. We created a culture. Very easy with 6 compared to 55.
Yeah.
Figure all the staff and everything. But with that platform and just continuing to stay focused on culture, we do put effort into it. The management team puts effort into it. It's not just all activities and events, but we do those. We do those community ones. We have one coming up in a week from tomorrow.
Shameless plug.
Yeah,
Market
shameless
forecast.
plug.
Make sure to be there.
But we do plenty that are broker and staff oriented only, and family. Family is very important to us all. And even though it might be a handful, 4, 5 events a year, or more with just the brokers, but the point is, it's enough to create an environment just away from the transactional part of the business to say, we spend a lot of time doing that. Let's spend a little time
being human
and enjoying each other, getting to know each other better.
Yeah.
I would say that it's an exception for somebody not to feel that they can call all the other compatriots in the office a friend.
Well, and that's why I've been so interested about it, because, like I'd mentioned, I've gotten to tag along on, a handful of the events or whatever it might be. And you know how it is usually there's kind of like, you talk to the two people that you're comfortable, you go to that thing and you know that you'll have the one guy that you can chat with about the one hobby or, whatever it is. At every Wells Group thing I've been to, I've talked to different people about different things, and I feel like I've had, authentic, like real conversations with people, and it's been so wide varying, and it's refreshing, to be candid. And you'd mentioned when you started it that, obviously intentional in terms of building that culture and easier when there were 6 rather than 55. One thing I'm curious about is when you started the Wells Group, did you have goals? And I know that you did, but I'm curious, what were those goals? And did you say 40 years from now I want to, be a celebrity star on the Chasing Greatness podcast? No, I'm kidding. But did you think that it could ever become what it's become? Has it surprised you? Has this always been your vision? What's the differences between when you started it and your goals and where we are now?
It's a fair question. To flash back and tell you, yes, I put together a pretty specific business plan on the little first ever computer in the real estate office in Durango in 1985.
Did you save it on a
9-inch
floppy disk?
Floppy disk,
Yeah.
9-inch green screen. I had to have John Ogier, who at the time was the chief financial officer at Purgatory, help me with the spreadsheet because the formulas were so complicated.
I can't imagine.
But we did that because we borrowed a little money to start the company, went to banks, got a lot of pats on our back saying, you guys nice young guys and appreciate your ambition. That was 4 out of 5 banks said that to us.
Wow.
It was a recession. And we had a bank that called me that night and said, we're going to do this deal. So we banked with that company ever since. So there you go. There's some loyalty. Right?
Yeah.
They took a risk with us, and we've kept that relationship. But to the point, yes, the 5-year plan was to get launched. My personal goals were to become the market leader. I feel that we got there later than we should have. I'm guessing we've been market leader, as I said, 25, 27 years. So for 10 years, we were not number one. And don't get me wrong, we have great respect and admiration for our competitors. We, as a real estate community, get along so much better than any community in other areas that I've ever talked to. And that's a fact. I talked to friends of mine in other communities that go, how do you guys get along so well in Durango? I said, well, small community, we have to.
Yeah.
Right? And we want to. Have to and want to. But you wouldn't have this in Denver, that same relationship. So back to the company. Yeah, I'm a competitive person. I get called down for that some still. But my goal was not to wait 10 years to be the market leader. But it took us about probably 12 years to the market leader. Now, market leader, a good friend of mine who we had as sales manager for a while said, look, you have to be respectful of that. That's the reward. Don't focus on being market leader. Focus on what gets you to being a market leader, which is very well put. Back to collaboration with people that are smarter than you,
right?
Which is a lot of people in my case. But
it's every person in my case.
No, but Chuck Owens said that, and it made me really think like, okay, John, you're overly competitive on this, focused on this point. But he was right. What you do to become a market leader is really where the meat is. The reward
is the market leader.
Is your market leader.
What an interesting perspective and piece of advice. It's almost like you got to focus on the process rather than the end result.
The results, right.
Was that hard? Because I share your personality traits with the competitiveness and big goals and,
It wasn't hard. It was great to have the different vision of it because I don't disagree that it was a reward. I just wanted the company to be there. Not for money per se. It's the ability to say, which I already knew we had. we have the best team.
Yeah.
And if you have the best team, putting it in a sports analogy, Fort Lewis basketball tonight, right? If you have the best team, you should be winning the championship.
Right.
So
You should be the market leader.
should be a market leader. That's the reward. How'd you get there? By taking great care of your customers. I mean, that's a simple way to put it.
Oh, but it's so true. It's refreshing actually to hear that, because I've been going through, when we first started, we had rapid growth, exponential, almost hard to manage growth. And then, we grew, which brought growing pains. And, now you have to look differently at growth and things like that. So I've had meeting after meeting thinking through, how do we continue to grow? How do we continue to grow? And the conclusion that I've arrived at is that the path to success for us is happy customers, happy clients. And then we get referrals, they stay with us. It's literally, and it's been challenging for me though, because I've always liked to look ahead. New thing, what's shiny? Who's the new client I can go pursue? I've always been, when I've realized, and it's so interesting to hear how it's applied to your business and the real estate world, that you got to take care of your customers. And if that's the focus, then the rest kind of comes, because you learn a lot, you build those good relationships, you've got the loyalty. It's fascinating to hear that it applies, in both worlds, because I've struggled with looking too far to the horizon and needing to focus down a little bit. When you now, here we are, 2024, which, by the way, hopefully there's a good 40th anniversary celebration planned. If not, I'll
Next year, yeah.
I'll get with Zane and Angela on that. Yeah. But 40 years in, 55 brokers. I think
40 brokers.
40 brokers. Sorry.
Staff, yeah.
40 brokers, but a team of 55, which is significant. I think that you've won Best of Durango the last 14 years in a row or something. Anyway, my point is decades of, success and all of this stuff. What's it like now? What when you're leaving here today and headed to your house and you see, the Wells Group sign in the yards and you see it everywhere. What does that feel like? What's your perception and emotion now, kind of looking at what you've built from a step back?
Well, there's certain emotions and traits that everybody has different. I think certainly the competitiveness. I mean, somebody would be silly enough to run 100 miles or have a goal to run 100 miles.
Or just dumb enough.
Needs to have some therapy.
That is therapy.
Yeah. Well, it is therapy in a way. I agree. But to me, I'm proud of the team. We do as well sell, but we list more property in other companies. And oftentimes people that I know or don't know say, well, we just see your signs everywhere. That's kind of the general statement. Well, I take that as a compliment. And, the goal is, and none of us are perfect, but is hopefully to have the best possible experience from the beginning of the relationship of putting the sign in the yard till they pull the sign out to create that relationship. One good thing my first broker, way back when I started, 23, said is you're going to make friends out of your customers and customers out of your friends. And think about it. When you're young and you start in the business, I didn't have family here, but you're going to go to colleagues you knew from college that stayed here. You're going to go to your past employers. You're going to talk to people you know. If you had relatives, you're going to sell something to your cousin or your uncle. You're hoping to. But reality is when you create a foundation business, because each independent contractor is creating their own book of business, it's about, your friends should feel comfortable using you as a professional. And every time you have a transaction with a customer that has not been a previous friend, because they are now, is going to support you because you're going to be top of mind. That's the goal. That's the quality of the business. I'm sitting in a marketing office, but you can
advertise a
little. You market, but at the same time, the marketing is hopefully having a strong foundation to market from,
100%.
right? We're not a startup, so hopefully we have a little easier thing to market. Being independent, not a franchise, we certainly, just to touch on that, was on purpose. We were with Better Homes and Gardens for a short stint after opening because not getting to number one in the market, we thought, well, maybe we have to have an affiliation. And tried that for a while. It was a good learning experience. But quite honestly, where we are now is, I have anxiety every day about what the market's going to do. Are our brokers going to be making a good living? Because the inventory is low, lowest you'll find out in the real estate forecast since 1985 when we opened.
Wow.
Okay, we have 82% more people live in La Plata County than in 1985.
Wow. Where
are people finding a place to live? That's one thing. Interest rates are high. Prices are high because of what I've just said. So when you look at that, I get anxiety because it's like we want every resident of Durango to be able to live and work in this community. It's not happening. We have leakage to places like Cortez and Aztec, Farmington. Even Bayfield's gotten pricey for part of our population. So that's the part where we're not setting the price because we don't own the property. We help buyers and sellers. But if there's low inventory, more demand, prices go up. It's
Economics 101.
It's just tough. It's tough. So we want the community to be healthy, and that part is hard. We're not the cure for workforce housing, but we certainly want to be part of the solution.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing, but 40 years in, you still are feeling like there's problems, from a business perspective, you're the entrepreneur hat on. You're not taking your foot off the gas. You're not, driving home here feeling like you've done it, like you've made it. There's still work to be done. You still feel like personally, like, does it feel different than it did 40 years ago? Like from a business endeavor, or does it kind of just a different version of the same story?
It's less different than you think, so you maybe didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Because
I thought you could put your feet up and say that you did it.
You know that you won't be doing that because that's not your style. But I have to say that I do look at companies, whatever industry you want to look at, that took their foot off the gas or, chose to have work as a secondary option. And I don't want to use the word work. Have a profession as a secondary option. Whatever that profession is. It could be being a janitor at Park Elementary. That's a profession. And I've known people in that profession who have done a wonderful job and took pride every day. So don't get me wrong. When I say profession, it's not work. You want to create it as a career, as a profession. And I look at that, and some of those people are totally happy because they might go, geez, where'd the income kind of go? Or how come some of my staff isn't making ends meet? Again, because they're independent contractors, what I do has less impact, in a sense, of all the great people that work with our company. But I'm beating around the bush. Basically, you're not going to take your foot off the pedal, because there's going to be a new challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I thought probably in the Great Recession, 2008, 9, I said, I'm going to learn a lot from this. I've got it. This is the worst recession of 4 I've gone through. So what else could ever come that I haven't handled? Well, that was naive, because what happened? Then the pandemic came.
Right.
Have I ever dealt with a pandemic? No. But I thought that I'd experienced game-changing things to the industry and our economy. And, I hadn't. There's one more.
Always something.
So there's always something. So I think that's the one thing that you certainly have to realize is, there's things that are totally out of your control that can impact your business depending how you let them.
Right. Yeah. Do you think you'll ever retire? Do you think you'll ever feel satisfied, feel like you've done enough?
That retirement present on my desk that my team put on there, I'm a little concerned about that because I don't know where that came from.
Kind of like pushing.
Yeah, no, like good luck in the future. I'm like, what's this? No. No, not totally. I do want to get a little more mindset, which hasn't been easy to do, to work less
Yeah.
in some transition phase here to my next chapter. But again, that's not happening anytime soon. I have a great team, as I say, that's growing into the business. They're not growing; they're very experienced.
Yeah.
But as they transition more into a higher percentage ownership, and I transition out, then they might be telling me when that date's coming. But it's not anytime soon because still feel like I have something to contribute.
Yeah. And you're still feeling fulfilled. You still feel motivated and like you're still kind of enjoying overcoming those challenges like we've talked about and things like that.
Most of them, yeah. Just like any worldly challenge. I mean, some of them aren't so pleasant to deal with, and others are a challenge that have more reward when you come up with a solution.
Yeah. When the day does come and you're spending more of your time fishing than selling real estate, which, however many decades from now that is, what do you hope that, kind of the hesitant to, the legacy, but you've built something significant. You've built something meaningful. What do you hope stays with the Wells Group? Like, what do you hope is kind of like, that your mark is left, and when people are talking about the Wells Group, that the things that they're saying, and the when there's the quote from John Wells on the conference room, and Zane's running those meetings, what does the essence of that look like for you? What do you kind of hope that it's known for?
Yeah. Well, I think the growing is, I use the word growing because growing is changing as well as growing. It's not all about growing bigger. I mean, we have our office capacity. We could have 65 with 60 brokers in there. That's the desks we have. We have 40. That would be pretty tight. It's 60. So our goal isn't to have 60. And again, we have great people in the industry. It is to grow where they are comfortable with the culture. We're comfortable with them fitting the culture. And they are embracing our platform for supporting their business. Okay? So to me, to see that continue to grow, meaning
Evolve.
people are successful. I mean, this is an expensive community to live in. It wasn't that way when I started in 1979. It was not. I don't care about inflation. It wasn't as expensive to live in. And I look at that as young families and child care and, oh my gosh, the expense that people have to endure today in our inflated cost of the world is substantially higher. So our goal is we want people to have a good living, more than living wage, to be able to give back to the community. Because, why shouldn't they if they are more fortunate than others? So to me, I look at it as a platform that still encourages and attracts people that want to be top of their game, competitive, but cooperative and collaborative, and have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. The pandemic took a little fun out of it. The Great Recession took a little fun out of it. But I'd say right now our team, they have pretty good vision for enjoying themselves when they take the few minutes to enjoy it themselves, which really gives me a great feeling about them.
Is that what makes you the most proud, is like seeing your agents be successful? Because you mentioned in there, like, kind of this idea of not only surviving, but thriving, so much so that then they can contribute to the community and things like that. Is that a metric for success for you?
It is. It is being a competitive type person. Not everybody has that same. There are very successful people that are maybe not as driven as you. Okay. So I've had a hard time accepting that over the years, but it's true and it's great. But let me just say that in the real estate industry, when you go to work unemployed every day, to be able to be thriving and feel comfortable about, providing for your family and your community is very, comforting to me. And that feels like a win-win.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you're doing a great job of it. John, thank you so much for letting me pick your brain for a few minutes. We stayed right around the 7-minute mark for you.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
knew I told you I'd keep it easy.
Well, great. I know you can do some editing, get it to 7 minutes.
Yeah. No, but very sincerely, thank you for being an example for me. And I've just loved being able to observe the business that you're building, and I'm paying attention, and it's been so cool for me to, get to work with you on a professional level. I appreciate that more than you know, but I've really appreciated getting to be in the room and see what you've done. And, Nicole could not be happier. And it's just been really cool to see the business that you've built, the fact that you get to do it with Zane and your family, and then the impact that you're making on not only me and my family's lives, but the community and all these amazing organizations. And so I want to thank you for that, because the perspective that you've had with the success that you've experienced and the things that you've built and the way that you've built the healthy cultures and these initiatives of always giving back and things like that. It means a ton. And I just want you to know how much I appreciate it. So I have a shirt for you.
Oh, you do? Is it white?
It's black.
Because it's white shirt night at the basketball game. Yeah.
It's one of my Inspired by Example shirts, because I love when I get to observe people like you. And just by living the life that you're living is inspiring. And I just want to thank you for it. And so thank you a ton for letting me pick your brain and for sharing some of your knowledge.
Thank you. Always enjoy spending time with you as well.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.